What's going on, everyone out there? You are officially back in the green room. I am your host, the NFLExporter, coming to you live on Yeahmon Radio. We have the big Thursday night football game as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in town playing the home Atlanta Falcons, and the city is already buzzing. People have been tailgating for a couple hours. We got a real live vibe going on downtown outside the Georgia Dome. This is the third Thursday night football game of the season, and the city is definitely feeling it. Should be a good game tonight. Now, before we get into our first segment, let's go ahead and drop our social networks so you can make sure to keep up with us for the latest news and updates. For myself, you can find me on Twitter or Facebook at NFLExporter. That's spelled NFLExporter. And then to catch past editions of Yeahmon Radio, as well as all of the latest NFL and fantasy football news, you can go to youtube.com, click on channels, put in NFL Exporter, or go to youtube.com and in the search engine, put NFL Exporter on Yeahmon Radio. Now, to reach Yeahmon Radio, you want to go to Facebook, you can go to Twitter, or you can hit us up on Instagram, wherever it is that you are getting your grinding on. That is YEAHMON Radio. Now, if you would like to participate and be a part of the show, the call-in number is 716-249-0552. If you would like to use email, it is NFLExporter@yahoo.com. That is NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Feel free to call in or email us if you have questions, want to leave comments, need some fantasy football advice, or you just want to chop it up about some football. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the latest news that's happening around the NFL. The big news, of course, is the star running back for the Minnesota Vikings, Adrian Peterson. It has been a whirlwind the last week. I'm quite sure his emotions have been all over the place. Now, reports came out right before we actually did this show last week that Peterson was going to be deactivated last Sunday, which is when the Minnesota Vikings played the New England Patriots. Peterson was arrested and indicted on child abuse charges. Now, he missed last Sunday's game, and starting off this week, the Vikings reactivated him. He was going to be practicing all week long, and he was going to be playing in the Vikings game this week at the New Orleans Saints. Now, a new story had unveiled a couple days ago. A report came out that Peterson, allegedly in 2013, had a similar situation where his discipline of his child was pretty excessive. And so I knew at that point that there was a possibility that the Vikings may decide to take further action. Minnesota's stance on the situation was they sat him out for a game. They were going to let the legal process play its part, and then from there decide what their next move was going to be. But after that second report came out, you knew there was a possibility that Peterson may not play again moving forward, or he may not play this Sunday. And then I knew for sure once I seen the governor for the state of Minnesota come out yesterday and say that the Vikings running back should not play, I knew that this story was not finished. And the Vikings have decided to deactivate running back Adrian Peterson indefinitely until they find out exactly what happened. And so this is pretty interesting. Obviously, the Minnesota Vikings season is over. That was their only hope, really, was running back Adrian Peterson. And so that put a huge dent in what that team's expectation is this year. And then obviously from a fantasy football standpoint, Adrian Peterson was a top 3 to 5 pick just about in every fantasy football draft. With him out of the lineup, and I know that hurt me. I have him in my Yahoo league. Was certainly depending on leaning on him for a big year. If you have Adrian Peterson on your fantasy football team, it's looking like his year possibly may be done. So that is a huge loss. We're certainly going to check in on that story on a weekly basis, but that is huge news, considering a couple weeks ago, before this incident came out, that Adrian Peterson was one of the brightest faces, one of the biggest stars in the NFL, and was a guy who pretty much had a clean slate. Everybody really loved and respected Peterson. Now everybody's kind of looking at him with a sideways eye. So we have to see how that one plays out. Ray Rice, running back of the Baltimore Ravens, coming into last week, he was the big news as TMZ had released publicly the video footage showing him hit his wife in an elevator in his domestic violence incident that took place back in May of this year. And so you know that Rice had his contract terminated by his team, the Ravens. The NFL also suspended him or banned him indefinitely. Well, now Ray Rice, along with the Players Association, is filing a grievance and appealing his suspension, or I should say his ban. And so we have to wait to see how that one plays out, especially when you're getting into legalities and things of that nature. You know that things can drag on for quite some time, but it appears that Ray Rice is not going to go away quietly or let this situation just take place without any resistance or pushing back. And so that's another story that we're going to keep our eyes tightly glued on to see how that one plays out. Also going on around the NFL right now, you know that the league's office is still under fire. Right now, private investigators came forward last week stating that the video footage that was released by TMZ that's showing Ray Rice hitting his wife in an elevator, private investigators are saying that video footage was given to the commissioner, Roger Goodell, and the NFL league offices back earlier this year. And you know that Goodell came out last Monday and said that that was the very first time that him and his offices had seen that footage. So there's certainly some contradicting information there. That's another story we're going to keep a close eye on to see how that one plays out, because if it ends up happening where Goodell in the league office is lying, I'm quite sure they're going to become under a lot of criticism and duress. How about the Dallas Cowboys owner, Jerry Jones? He had a lawsuit filed against him back from 2009 where an exotic dancer or a stripper, whatever name that you would prefer to go with, the young lady is saying that she cannot quite remember that night clearly because there was a lot of alcohol involved. But Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones, the young lady is accusing him of sexual harassment. She says that he forcibly kissed her, he forcibly touched her breasts, forcibly touched her butt, and also forcibly touched her private parts. And so obviously Jones, his lawyer, his defense attorney, they are refuting these charges. They say that they are absolutely ridiculous and untrue. And so that's something else that we're going to have to pay attention to. A lot of times when it comes to these lawsuits, they get handled outside of court. The defendant of the person basically ends up getting a lump sum to basically put a lid on it, to keep things quiet. So that's another story that we're going to keep a close eye on. Also, the latest right now for the NFL new drug policy trying to take place. The Players Association, along with the NFL, still have not been able to reach an agreement. So as of right now, there have been no changes. Josh Gordon and Wes Welker, the two most notable names who will be affected if the league did reach an agreement with the Players Association. Both of those players right now are still serving their suspension. Josh Gordon's suspension is for a year. Wes Welker has missed 2 games. He has 2 more games to go. His was a 4-game suspension. Also about Josh Gordon, he did plead guilty to DUI charges from an incident that stemmed back from over the summer down in North Carolina. So he's got that out of the way. The other big news that went on around the NFL, obviously, was the injury bug. We talked about this last week. Teams have gotten hit hard again this week. Here is our list of injuries that happened in week 2 around the NFL. Running back Mark Ingram for the New Orleans Saints, he's out a month with a broken hand. Noshawn Moreno, running back from the Miami Dolphins, is out 4 to 8 weeks with a dislocated elbow. We had a couple of defensive backs, Walter Thurman for the New York Giants, as well as Charles Tillman for the Chicago Bears. Both of those players are out for the entire season. Tillman tore a tricep, and Thurman, he has a torn pectoral. A.J. Green of the Cincinnati Bengals was unable to play this past Sunday. He has a strained toe. His status is week to week. They're hoping that they can get him back on the field in week 5 when the Bengals play the New England Patriots. We have Doug Martin, who plays tonight for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look like he's going to be a game-time decision. He was questionable. He missed last week's game with a knee injury. We have Jordan Cameron, looks like he's trying to work his way back on the field. He missed last week's game with a shoulder injury. Maurice Jones-Drew of the Raiders, he's another guy who's hoping to get back in the lineup this week. We'll see how that goes. He has a hand injury. The defensive tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Gerald McCoy, has a fractured hand. He's expected to be out anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. We have Ryan Matthews, the running back for the San Diego Chargers, has an MCL sprain. He's going to be out anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Star running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, Jamal Charles, has a high ankle sprain. He's expected to miss anywhere from 1 to 2 months. We have Eric Decker, the wide receiver for the New York Jets, came up lame on a hamstring injury in the third quarter of the Jets' loss this past weekend at Green Bay. He's listed as day-to-day. We have Robert Griffith III, the starting quarterback for the Washington Redskins. He's likely done for the season. He suffered a dislocated ankle. Now, it was not a fracture or a break, so the Redskins did not put him on the season-ending IR list. However, with the timetable that it appears that he may be able to come back, you can pretty much count RG3 out for this year, and that's a big loss because he was certainly one of the best NFL players his rookie year back in 2012, but injuries have just marred him basically his entire career, as he was hurt pretty bad at the end of his rookie year. Fellow teammate Deshaun Jackson of the Washington Redskins suffered a sprained shoulder in last week's game. He's listed as day-to-day. You know that he's probably going to do everything he can to play this week, as he's going to be playing his former team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Vernon Davis of the San Francisco 49ers rolled his ankle. He's listed as day-to-day. Mercedes Lewis, tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars, has a high ankle sprain. He is going to miss anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. And then you also have Carson Palmer, the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. He missed last week's game with a shoulder injury. He said that he is on a day-to-day status. And so as you can see there, if you take into consideration the players that were injured in week 1 combined with the players who were injured in week 2, it's a serious situation. Health is a major issue, and it's very important for a team's success in the long run in an NFL season. That's going to wrap up our first segment. Once again, you are in the green room on Yeahmon Radio. I am your host, the NFL Exporter, and we are getting ready for the big Thursday night football game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in town playing the Atlanta Falcons. We'll be back right after these messages, so don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the green room. Once again, you are listening to Yeahmon Radio, and I am your host, the NFL Exporter. And we're getting ready. Thursday night football, big game. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in town playing the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons 1-1, looking to improve their record. They won their first game at home against the New Orleans Saints 37-34. Had a tough loss last week at Cincinnati 24-10. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers are in search of their first victory of the season. They lost their two home games, surprisingly. They lost week 1 to Carolina. Everyone thought they would win last week at home against St. Louis. Were not able to pull that game out either. And so the Buccaneers are looking to get on track with a road division victory over the Atlanta Falcons. Now let's go ahead and jump into some fantasy football. And the first thing I'm going to do is address some emails I received. I'd like to thank these next couple people for hitting us up via email. They had some fantasy football questions that they wanted to get answered. I have Myron from Atlanta, Georgia. His favorite team is the Atlanta Falcons. And his question is, I have Adrian Peterson on my fantasy football team. It looks like that he may not play the remainder of the season or for a very long time. He was a first round pick of mine. I was going to depend on him largely. Now that he's gone, what players should I pick up in his absence? That is an excellent question. That is a question I myself am addressing right now. Again, in my Yahoo Fantasy Football League, I have Adrian Peterson. And what I would say is, first and foremost, you got to hit the waiver wire. You got to find some running backs who are going to be a valuable fit for your team. And if Peterson is out for the year, that is kind of tough to do because some of these players are week to week. So I would say we're going to have to use two strategies. And I'm with you on this one, Myron. We're in the same predicament. So number one, we got to hit the waiver wire and see if there are any long-term answers, meaning are there any running backs on the waiver wire who are starters for their football team and have any opportunity to be of value. Right now, I don't see that, at least in the leagues I'm in. When I hit the waiver wire, I didn't see any running backs who I could stick in for the remainder of the season. Now, I would say number two, that means we have to look for a week-to-week basis. Now, with all the injuries that took place around the NFL, here are some running backs that you might find valuable for your fantasy football team. We got Kyrie Robinson. He's the running back for the New Orleans Saints. He's replacing Mark Ingram for the next maybe month or so. You have Bobby Rainey of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Doug Martin again for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He should be back soon, but at least for this week, especially if Martin is not able to go tonight, Bobby Rainey will be a nice replacement. We're talking about Niles Davis. He's the backup running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jamal Charles, their starter, is expected to miss some time. Davis will be a good pickup. Donald Brown, he's the backup running back for the San Diego Chargers. He's going to be replacing Ryan Matthews for the San Diego Chargers for maybe the next 4 to 6 weeks. Also, Ahmad Bradshaw of the Indianapolis Colts. He should see his playing time continue to increase. He had a couple touchdowns on Monday night against Philly. He's with the Indianapolis Colts. And then Jeremy Hill. He's the backup running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, right now, Hill's time is limited because they have a starter in Giovanni Bernard, but new offensive coordinator Hugh Jackson is running the football an awful lot. They ran the ball 42 times last week against Atlanta, and so he's a guy who gets goal line carries, should be able to see the playing field, some. And if it's a game like this week against Tennessee, where Cincinnati, at least on paper, should be able to win this one mighty handily with the way their defense is playing, he may be able to see some extended playing time. And then also take into consideration that Giovanni Bernard is in his second year. Again, Hugh Jackson is running the football an awful lot. And so at any time, if Giovanni Bernard were to get injured, then Jeremy Hill will be the guy who steps in and gets his playing time. The third option, Myron, obviously would be seeing if there are some players on your team where you could possibly put a trade together and, trade a couple of your players to another team who has a premium at running backs and bring in somebody to replace Adrian Peterson. My next question is from Charles out in South Carolina. His favorite football team is the Carolina Panthers. Guess that makes sense. His question is, running back Jamal Charles is a starter in the first round selection of my team. He is injured for quite some time. How can I replace him? That's a good question, Charles. And since we're talking about running backs, the same would pretty much apply to the same would apply to you, Charles, for the situation with Adrian Peterson. Now, you have a much better situation than Myron, because your backup running back, Niles Davis, is a big-time player in this Kansas City offense. And so if you're able to get Niles Davis, that would be a great pickup for your team, because now that Charles is gone, he's the next player in line. And out in Kansas City, the running back gets a lot of action. If you can't do that, Charles, I just ran down a list of running backs who would be good pickups for your team. That being Kyrie Robinson of the Saints, Jeremy Hill for Cincinnati, Ahmad Bradshaw for Indianapolis, Bobby Rainey for Tampa Bay, probably is a short-term fix, Donald Brown of the San Diego Chargers. Also, again, putting a trade together may be in your best interest. Next question is from Aaron out in Maryland. His favorite team is the Miami Dolphins. His question is, Robert Griffith III was my starting quarterback. Now that he's injured pretty much for the entire year, what options do I have available? That's a very good question. Now, the first thing that I would say do is, again, you hit the waiver wire. That is what that is for. For anybody who's unaware of what that is, basically, after a fantasy football draft takes place, any players who were not drafted to everybody's roster, these players basically go in a pool or a separate category where they're available for teams to pick up on a weekly basis after games are played. And so you have to hit the waiver wire. I would say number one, Kirk Cousins is his backup out in Washington. Seems to have a pretty good grasp of that offense. They have some nice weapons out there with running back Alfred Morris, Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson. So if you can get Kirk Cousins, Robert Griffith III's backup, that would be a good look. Also, some other running quarterbacks who may be available on a free agent wire could be possibly Joe Flacco, Ben Roethlisberger, and also Ryan Fitzpatrick, Brian Hoyer. Again, I think maybe trying to look and packaging some players in a trade may be in your best interest, because all those guys I just mentioned, Joe Flacco, Ben Roethlisberger, I don't think they're starters every single week. These are guys that you want to put in based on the matchup, so you might have to do some makeshift there. My final email came in from Terrence. He's out in Atlanta, Georgia as well. His favorite team is the Buffalo Bills. His question, this one is along the same lines, and as you can see here, a lot of running backs have been getting injured. My starting running back is Mark Ingram of the New Orleans Saints. Now that he's missing time for the next month or so, how can I replace him? Who's another good pickup? The advice is the same. We've rattled off the same running backs. Again, that's Bobby Rainey, Jeremy Hill, Ahmad Bradshaw, Kyrie Robinson, and Niles Davis. So if you have an opportunity to get any of those guys, I would say for you, because you have Mark Ingram, who is a Saint, if you can pick up Kyrie Robinson, the Saints running back, he's going to be replacing what Ingram does on the ground. That would be a good fix for your football team. All right, I'd like to thank all of those gentlemen for hitting me up on the email. Again, that email is NFLExporter@yahoo.com, and I'll make sure, like I did those four guys, to make sure that we include you in the show. Let's take a look at our fantasy football studs from last week. These were the top players at each respective position getting game balls. We had quarterback Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers with 27 points. The star running backs were Darren Sproles of the Philadelphia Eagles with 23, and Giovanni Bernard for the Cincinnati Bengals had 22. The top two wide receivers were Jordy Nelson of the Green Bay Packers with 26, Brandon Marshall of the Chicago Bears with 22. The top tight end was Antonio Gates of the San Diego Chargers. He had 27 points. We had the top defense, the New England Patriots, with 27 points. And the top kicker for week 2 in fantasy football was Dan Bailey of the Dallas Cowboys. He had 19 points. Our fantasy football duds from last week. These are starters who underachieved horribly. We had Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons with 9 points. Jamal Charles and Noshawn Moreno, even though they left the game with an injury, they still left you with 0 points. We're talking about Roddy White and Kelvin Benjamin. Both of those guys were only able to muster up 4 points. White is with the Falcons, Benjamin with the Carolina Panthers. And at the tight end position, Rob Gronkowski was only able to muster up 3 points. From a kicker standpoint, we had Mike Nugent with only 3 points. He missed 3 field goals. And the huge disappointment was the Miami Dolphins defense playing a second-string quarterback after wreaking havoc on Tom Brady in Week 1. They were only able to, this is not even any points, -1 point. That is absolutely unacceptable. If you had any of those players in your lineup, quite sure they did not make you happy. Now let's take a quick look at some players from our fantasy football draft board. I have one of the drafts in front of me. Just want to take a look at some of these top players and how they're performing. Man, I'm looking at this first round, and there are a lot of disappointments. Adrian Peterson mentioned he only played 1 game this season. He is not going to be back for quite some time. Jamal Charles had 2 points in his Week 1 matchup, left the game with 0 points last week. Eddie Lacy for the Green Bay Packers has only had no more than 4 points in his first 2 games. He's been a huge disappointment. I'm taking a look at the second round here, and everybody pretty much looks good. I would say that Drew Brees is the one player who has underachieved. He has not managed to put up 20 points yet. Everybody in that second round, though, is doing fairly well. Demaryius Thomas, Dez Bryant, Brandon Marshall, Julio Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Arian Foster, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell. Everybody's pretty much performing there. Taking a look at the third round, obviously Doug Martin for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 0 points in Week 1, sat out last week with an injury. Reggie Bush has been a huge disappointment, had 6 points Week 1, 2 points last week. Alshon Jeffrey of the Chicago Bears, 7 points Week 1, 4 points last week. He's nursing a hamstring injury. Also, Zach Stacy of the St. Louis Rams. He did manage to get double digits last week against Tampa Bay, but in Week 1, he only had 4 points. Taking a look at the fourth round, Vincent Jackson of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Larry Fitzgerald of the Arizona Cardinals. Both of those guys have not been able to put up more than 5 points in their first 2 weeks of action. We're looking at Victor Cruz of the New York Giants, 2 points Week 1, 6 points last week. He's underachieving. And then Deshaun Jackson also is a guy, sat out all of last week pretty much after he was injured in the first quarter, only had 6 points in Week 1. So those are some of the guys who are underachieving right now, who were drafted in the first 4 or 5 rounds in fantasy football. Let's go to another quick commercial break, and when we come back, let's start getting into our midweek report. Once again, we're getting ready for the big Thursday night football game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Atlanta Falcons. This is a NFC South rivalry. The Falcons are trying to improve to 2-1, while the Buccaneers are looking to get their first victory of the season. Things are starting to heat up in downtown Atlanta. Once again, I'm the NFL Exporter, and you are listening to Yeahmon Radio. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Thank you for returning to the Green Room. I am your host, the NFL Exporter, and you are live listening to Yeahmon Radio. We are getting ready here in Atlanta for the big Thursday night football game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers in town. We got a division battle here on our hands. The Buccaneers are looking for their first victory of the season. Meanwhile, Atlanta is looking to rebound from a loss last week out in Cincinnati. You know that quarterback Matt Ryan is going to be looking for wide receiver Julio Jones early and often, while the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be trying to figure out some things on the offensive side of the football. Have not been able to get it clicking on all cylinders, especially in the passing game. You have a big-time wide receiver in Vincent Jackson, but new quarterback Josh McCown has not been able to find him or really get that passing game going. So we're going to see how that's going to work out. Now let's go ahead and jump into our midweek report. Start bouncing around the NFL, looking at the matchups and seeing what these teams need to do to be successful moving forward. We got the San Diego Chargers playing the Buffalo Bills. Pretty intriguing matchup here. Now the Chargers are 1-1. They lost a close one, 18-17 in Week 1 to the Arizona Cardinals. Came back with a strong showing last week at home, beating the Seattle Seahawks 30-21. You know that Phillip Rivers is looking to air the football out. And it's going to be an interesting matchup here because the Bills definitely have a top 10 defense and play really well at home. For the San Diego Chargers, you would think that their team as a whole would be full of confidence. That was a big home victory last week against Seattle. Seattle moved the ball, I don't want to say easily, but it was very efficient. Tight end Antonio Gates had 3 touchdown receptions. He looked like his former self of years ago. And so we're going to see what they can do. On the defensive side of the football, obviously San Diego played some real inspired football. But what I've seen early going on in the NFL is the home teams definitely carry a lot of weight. For the Buffalo Bills, you have a situation where I think they're really starting to understand what they need to do to win ball games. That defense, again, has played really well, especially that front seven. The Bills' defense, dating back to last year, played really well at home. So I think that bodes well for them. Quarterback E.J. Manuel, who's in his second year, I think he understands that he needs to limit or not make turnovers. I think that really has helped Buffalo in the first 2 weeks of the season. He has not turned the football over. And then, they've got playmakers. Rookie wideout Sammy Watkins had a breakout game last year. 8 catches, 117 yards, a touchdown. C.J. Spiller, I really like what head coach Doug Marrone did. Said, I want my playmakers to touch the football as much as possible, regardless of when and how. And so he put C.J. Spiller back on kickoff returns. And in just the second game of the season, Spiller broke one for 102 yards. And so this should be a pretty good game. We're going to go with San Diego on the road. I think they have a better team, should have more momentum. But again, this Bills bunch is a confident team as well. They were able to get a road victory at Chicago underneath their belt. Played really well last week at home against Miami. So I think this one is going to be closer than what people expect. Nonetheless, we're going to take San Diego winning this one on the road. Let's go with San Diego 27, Buffalo 20. Next, we have the Dallas Cowboys traveling to play the St. Louis Rams. And on paper, this looks like a game that Dallas should win pretty handily when you consider that St. Louis is playing with a second or a third string quarterback. That last week, second string quarterback Sean Hill was unable to play. And so they went with their third stringer Davis, and he did a good job. 235 yards, did not turn the ball over. You figure that was the difference in a close win on the road, 19-17 over Tampa Bay. As for Dallas, did not look good week 1. Lost at home against San Francisco. Were able to rebound and win a game last week at Tennessee. I think Dallas is starting to understand a little bit more the value that they have in their star running back, DeMarco Murray, who had 29 carries for 167 yards in the TD. Without question, there are going to be some games that Dallas has to pass the ball more, but I think being balanced, especially with Tony Romo still, from what I see, trying to get back to full health after back surgery. You have a star wide receiver in Dez Bryant. You certainly want to get him the ball as much as possible. Jason Witten is also a matchup problem for most linebackers and safeties. But overall, Dallas's defense is the one who was, kind of getting an evil eye and looking very bad in the preseason. I think some early matchups against easier offenses have helped them out. San Francisco, you've seen them struggle mightily, but last week, Tennessee, Jake Locker, that offense really isn't that huge of a threat. And then this week, again, playing a St. Louis Rams team that doesn't have any real talent on offense. I mean, Zach Stacy, he's a decent running back. Brian Quick, he's been trying to emerge as a wide receiver. But when you take a look at this game, I think it's really about Dallas continuing to establish the run. In St. Louis, surprisingly, has given up a ton of rush yards. Now, they did hold Adrian Peterson to 75 yards in week 1, but it was a fellow teammate Cordero Patterson for the Vikings, who had 102 rushing yards. Last week, they gave up 144 rushing yards to Tampa Bay's running back Bobby Rainey. So I think I'm quite sure they're going to try to focus in on the run. This may be a week that Tony Romo in the passing game look to air it out a little more, but they've got to continue to establish DeMarco Murray. We're going to take the Cowboys on the road again. Just have the better team. Barring no turnovers, you know that one thing that St. Louis can do is rush the passer. And so we're going to go with Dallas in a close one on the road. Let's go with Dallas 24, St. Louis 14. Next, we have Washington traveling out to Philadelphia. Normally, this would probably be one of the better games. You're figuring RG3 coming to town. You have Deshaun Jackson, the former Eagle, who will be playing back in Philadelphia for the first time since they released him. Unfortunately, RG3 is gone with a dislocated ankle. He's probably gone for the season. Deshaun Jackson suffered a shoulder sprain last week. Not sure what his status is going to be for the game, but again, you have to figure if he can go, he wants to be out there to try to show his former team they made a mistake by dropping him. When you're looking at this Redskins team right now, they're 1-1. I think the biggest adjustment for them now is they got a new quarterback in Kirk Cousins. So they're going to have to make some slight adjustments, but not too much. You know, head coach Jay Gruden was quoted this past week as saying since he came to Washington, he could see that Cousins was a better fit for his particular system than RG3. A lot of people since last year have been lobbying that Cousins is the better quarterback. So I think now we'll get a chance to see that. He's not going to be coming in a backup role. He's going to be the starting quarterback. So let's see what he has to offer. For Washington, their biggest concerns obviously on the defensive side of the football. You got your work cut out when you're looking at this Philadelphia Eagles offense with a lot of playmakers. And so last week, Washington had a franchise record, 10 sacks against Jacksonville. You know that's not going to be the case this year. This is their first true test because even in week 1 against the Houston Texans, an offense that is really ball control and really doesn't bring a lot of diversity to the table. We're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a team that really has been bailed out by their big free agent pickup, Darren Sproles. Sproles was a huge spark in their week 1 victory against Jacksonville. He definitely delivered last week, 152 receiving yards, over 200 yards all purpose, scored a rushing touchdown. Probably the one of the most diverse and multifaceted players in the NFL. Outside of him, obviously, you've got LaShawn McCoy, who now that Adrian Peterson is gone for quite some time, Jamal Charles is hurt. I think without question, Shady McCoy is the best running back in the NFL right now. And also the Eagles have some weapons. You know, Nick Foles likes to spread it out. You have Jeremy Maclin, Zach Ertz. So this is going to be a big test for that Washington defense. As far as Philadelphia's defense is concerned, they've done a pretty decent job at stopping the run. This obviously is going to be the best running back they faced this far with Alfred Morris. And then also their secondary has played fairly well, but they've got to do a better job at getting a pass rush. Nonetheless, we like Philadelphia in this one at home. Let's go with Philadelphia 34, Washington 23. Next, we have the Houston Texans making a trip out to New York, or I should say New Jersey, to play the Giants. Houston's coming in 2-0. They've definitely found their recipe for success. Running back Arian Foster looks to be back 100% healthy. He's had averaging 27 carries for 114 yards coming into this ball game. They've certainly got their running game back in order. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he has not turned the football over, has a couple nice options in the passing game with DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson. And that defense is playing really well under new defensive coordinator Romeo Crennel. You know that J.J. Watt's a beast. They're getting just solid play all around. This was a top 10 defense in 2012. Last year, obviously, they took a step back due to a lot of injuries and just being an off year. Once they get Jadeveon Clowney back, I think that's going to make this defense even better. When you look at the New York Giants, the struggles continue. Last week in a game that they lost by 11 points, silly mistakes. You have 4 turnovers and you're playing at home. You also give up a touchdown on a punt return. And so it doesn't look good for the Giants again this week. They're at home, so that's some hope. but this Texans team is coming in, playing really well. And based on what we've seen out of New York thus far, you have a dominant defense coming in. They've struggled to stop the run. Just doesn't look good. Now, I know that the Houston Texans offense isn't the most explosive through the passing game, but again, I think they're just playing sound football. So we're going to take Houston winning this one on the road. Let's go with Houston 24 and the Giants 17. We have the Minnesota Vikings traveling out to play the New Orleans Saints. This one should be a blowout. Let's not try to color code it. The Saints have suffered 2 rough road losses, losing by 3 to the Falcons, losing last week by 2 points to the Cleveland Browns. You know that the Saints are very explosive when they play at home in the Superdome. You don't expect them to go 0-3. And obviously their defense has been the main thing that's struggling for them thus far. I actually picked them up this week in the fantasy league. I really think this is a game that the Saints are favored in heavily, especially when you take into consideration Adrian Peterson isn't going to be there. Very young secondary for Minnesota. And so I don't think the Saints will have any problem at home. This is the feel-good game that they needed to help try to get their season on track. When you're looking at this Minnesota Vikings team, again, the air has been taken out of this franchise. Their franchise player, Adrian Peterson, is not going to suit up. He's probably not going to be there for a very long time. He was their heart and soul. You know, now that he's gone, you have a backup running back. Their offense wasn't the most talented as is, with Matt Castle, kind of an average quarterback. You got a couple decent receivers, Cordero Patterson. He has a lot of upside, but without Adrian Peterson, obviously that's going to limit his production. You look at the defensive side of the football, you know, they got some talent, but it's kind of scattered. But I think more than anything, just the morale of this team is going to take a second to pick back up, because they know that their best player and their best chance for success is not going to be on the football field with them. This is a very young secondary. You expect for Drew Brees to dice them up. So again, we expect for this one to be a blowout. We're taking New Orleans 40, Minnesota 20. One more game that we should be able to fit in here, Tennessee Titans for this playing the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, it should be a game that Cincinnati wins pretty handily. They have a dominant defense. They showed that at home last week against the Falcons. Like what they're doing running the football. A.J. Green, their star wide receiver, is out, but Andy Dalton has protected the ball really well. For Tennessee, that offense continues to be lackluster under Jake Locker, struggling to find a running game. We're going to take Cincinnati in this one at home, 27-13. Once again, we are gearing up for Thursday night football. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in town. Can quarterback Josh McCown finally get on track with his star receiver Vincent Jackson? Meanwhile, Roddy White for the Atlanta Falcons have been battling a slight hamstring injury. We'll see what he has to offer tonight. This is Yeahmon Radio. You are in the green room with the NFL Exporter. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back to the Green Room, live on Yeahmon Radio. I am your host, the NFL Exporter. And once again, we are getting ready for the big Thursday night football game. The city is really starting to come alive. We have the rival Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming in to play the home Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons will be looking to get some type of running game going. Haven't had much success running the football in the first 2 games. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers are battling with some injuries. They're going to be without their top defensive tackle, Gerald McCoy, as well as their top defensive back, Mike Jenkins. Let's see if they can get some pressure on Matty Ice and try to stop the high-flying Falcons. Let's jump back into our midweek report. Once again, I am the NFL Exporter, and you are listening to Blaze One Radio. Baltimore is traveling out to play the Cleveland Browns. Pretty interesting matchup here. These teams in the AFC North definitely play some smash mouth football, have a lot of great defenses over there, Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati. And you figure this is going to be a close game. Both teams coming in feeling good about themselves. Last week, Baltimore won at home 26-6 over Pittsburgh. Cleveland was able to get a big home victory, beating the Saints 26-24. Looking at this one, you have to give the edge to Baltimore. You figure if the defenses are a push, meaning that both defenses, will balance each other out. Definitely Baltimore has a better offense. Bernard Pierce and Justin Forsett have been doing a good job running the football in the absence of Ray Rice. You also like the weapons that Joe Flacco has. He's been utilizing newcomer Steve Smith quite a bit. Torrey Smith is still there, even though he hasn't really done much this season. He's due for a breakout game at some point. You have a couple good tight ends in Dennis Pitta and Owen Daniel, the veteran, came over from Houston. He had a couple touchdown catches last week. Still have Jacoby Jones in the 3, and so I just think that on the offensive side of the football, Baltimore has more players who can hurt you. Also looking at this Cleveland Browns team, though, their offense has been putting it together. I think that Terrence West is going to have a tough time running the football against the Ravens. And also you look at the Browns wide receivers, just not a lot of guys to scare you. Andrew Hawkins has been doing a good job. But again, I had the Ravens right there at the end contesting with Cincinnati to win this division. I think the Ravens can go in here, even though it's a road game. The weather conditions are going to be the same. Short trip from Baltimore to Cleveland. So I like Baltimore winning this one in the defensive battle. Let's take Baltimore 20. Let's go with Cleveland 13. Next, we have Green Bay traveling out to Detroit. This certainly could be a high-scoring affair. Have two of the top gunslingers in the NFL, Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, going at it. But if you look at this game over the last couple years, it's been rather low-scoring. When it comes to teams in the same division playing each other, they know each other so well. Sometimes that factors into how effective both teams can execute and play. And so we're going to kind of, put it right there in the middle. This is a hard one to call. I mean, you're figuring Aaron Rodgers and that passing attack certainly can get it done if he's got time. But you know that the Packers struggle in pass protection. And Ndamukong Suh and those guys play really well at home. You're looking at Detroit. Their offense, does well. But again, their defense, not the best considering their secondary. Then you're looking at Green Bay. Last week, if Geno Smith and that offense was able to be that effective, that Matt Stafford and Megatron and these guys can put up some points. So I think these teams are very evenly matched at this point. We're going to go with the home team in a close one. Let's go with Detroit 27, Green Bay 24. Next, we have Indianapolis traveling to Jacksonville. Not much to talk about in this game. The Jaguars have not looked good this season. As we discussed when we did our rankings for running backs, Toby Gerhart was not the answer. This guy has not been able to do anything. You basically have a bunch of rookie wide receivers, offensive line who can't protect. Too much pressure on this defense. They're on the field way too long. Just can't hold up. You're looking at the Colts. I think this team is going to come in real focused, hungry, and motivated. They let one slip out of their hands last week. They were up 27-20 at home with about 5 minutes left in the ball game. And on 3rd down and 5, instead of running the ball and kicking the field goal to try to put them up 10 points, they elected to pass. The ball was intercepted. Philadelphia was able to go down and tie the game. Eventually end up winning that game 30-27. I know Andrew Luck was very disappointed after that game. Just called that play calling, flat out stupid. And so, as always, playing the Jacksonville Jaguars is a good way to pick up a victory and build some confidence with your team. Indianapolis will do exactly that. We got the Colts winning this one on the road at Jacksonville. Let's go with 27-10. Oakland is traveling out to New England. Another game that just does not look good. You have a rookie quarterback for the Oakland Raiders facing Bill Belichick and that defense that is vibing off the outstanding effort they put out last week in Minnesota. Tom Brady and that offense is looking to get on track. Now the Raiders, I will say, have a pretty good defense, but again, they're another team who ends up with their defense on the field way too long because their offense can't execute. Oakland has some pieces, but I see them falling apart already. After just 2 games, veteran safety Charles Woodson came out and said that the Raiders flat out suck. Even if that's true, that's not something that you want to come out and say about your ball club, especially this early in the season. You have a rookie quarterback, so I don't know what his expectations were. Nonetheless, we got New England running away with this one at home. Let's go with New England 34, the Raiders 13. Next, we have the San Francisco 49ers traveling out to play the Arizona Cardinals. This should be a pretty interesting matchup here. I think the biggest thing we're looking for, we don't know if Arizona's starting quarterback, Carson Palmer, is going to play in this football game. If he does not play, then the obvious advantage is to the 49ers. You figure both of these defenses right now are playing at a high level, but obviously the 49ers have more weapons on offense. Now, the big thing to watch out for this one, let's see how 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick rebounds. You know that he did not play well last week. The 49ers built up a 17-0 lead, and it was his 4 turnovers, a fumble and 3 interceptions that ultimately led to the Bears getting back in the game and at the end of the day winning that game. So let's see what he's made out of. I'm quite sure he is chomping at the bit to get back on the football field and make amends for his mistakes. We're going to go with the 49ers on the road. In this one, again, if Carson Palmer plays, I think it'll be a little bit closer, but I think San Francisco has enough, and it's a veteran team who's looking to rebound. Let's take the 49ers in the close one. We're going to go with San Francisco 20, Arizona 14. Next, here's a rematch from last year's Super Bowl. You have the Denver Broncos traveling out to play the Seattle Seahawks. Very intriguing matchup here. These teams played last year, so there's a lot on the table. Denver's coming in. They're 2-0. They're looking to really get on track. That offense has not been sharp as it would like to be right now. They're still trying to get their running game going. They've won a couple close ones. They beat Indy by 7 points in week 1, beat Kansas City by 7 points in week 2. And so their defense, even though they brought over all these playmakers, has not performed well. They've made the plays when they've needed to, but they've got to play much better. Here's the Seattle Seahawks team back at home where they've only lost 1 game in the past 2 seasons. You know that this team is looking to rebound after pretty much getting manhandled. The Chargers played much tougher and more physical. Marshawn Lynch only had 6 carries last week. He's going to get a heavy dose of work. And the Seahawks are always pumped up when they're playing at home in front of that wild 12th man crowd. You got Denver coming in. They feel like they have a recipe to beat them based off of what they did last year in the Super Bowl. Big game here. I know that I think this game is bigger for Denver than it is Seattle. I think that Seattle is a team that really knows what they need to do to win. And I think it's about a psychological edge when I say that. I feel like Seattle feels like they can beat Denver. They've done that already. But when you look at Denver, this is an early season test they need to really confirm that they're a top team. And, if you're planning on being the best, you got to beat the best. So this is a huge early test. I know Peyton Manning has this one circled on his calendar. He's the ultimate competitor, looking to rebound from his poor performance in last year's Super Bowl. Nonetheless, we are going to go with Seattle at home. Let's go with Seattle 27, Denver 23. Next, we have Kansas City traveling out to play Miami. Expect for this to be a low-scoring affair. Injuries are really wreaking havoc on this game for Kansas City. As we mentioned last week, they had a couple starters on defense have season-ending injuries. Their safety, Eric Berry, sprung his ankle last week. Don't know how healthy he's going to be. They lost their star running back, Jamal Charles. When you're looking at Miami, they're going to be without their most effective runner, Noshawn Moreno. He suffered a dislocated elbow last week. They're also playing without Donnell Ellerbe, their top linebacker. He's gone for the season. They also played without their other 2 starting linebackers last week. Don't quite know what their status is for the game. You have a couple teams built alike. They were relying on really tough defenses, trying to run the football and really keep their quarterbacks in low-risk situations as far as what they're doing in the passing game. We're going to take Miami at home in this one, but it's going to be close. These teams really mirror and image each other a lot. I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas City wins it on the road because these teams are so much alike. But we're going to give Miami the edge at home. Let's go with Miami 20, Kansas City 17. We've got in our Sunday night football game, Pittsburgh is traveling out to play Carolina. This is interesting because this Pittsburgh Steelers defense has fell off. We've got to face it. This is not the same Steelers defense we've come to know. On offense, you still have Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger hooking up with Antonio Brown. But when I'm looking at this Carolina Panthers defense, who has played exceptionally well, forcing a lot of turnovers, you're looking at Cam Newton being very efficient with the football last week. You've got to give the edge to the Carolina Panthers at home. This is another one that may be a defensive battle, not a lot of scoring going on, but I just think that Carolina, especially being at home and what they were able to do last week, they're really establishing what they were able to do last year, which was play stout defense and have an offense who puts up enough points to win. I think that'll be the case this week. Let's go with Carolina at home. Let's go with Carolina 23. Let's go with Pittsburgh 16. In our Monday night football game, we have Chicago traveling out to play the New York Jets. This makes for a pretty interesting matchup here. I think that Chicago is getting hit by the injury bug early as well. We have to check the status again on Alshon Jeffrey, their wide receiver, nursing a hamstring injury. Brandon Marshall's trying to get his knee back to 100%. This is a similar matchup for Matt Forte that he faced last week against San Francisco, where he was ineffective. He's playing a top 10 run defense. These guys for the Jets do not give it up in that front seven, but that secondary is suspect. And so we could see a similar situation. You know, I don't think Geno Smith and that offense can put up enough points, but they are at home where Smith and that offense plays a little bit better. I think a big loss for Chicago is their defensive back, Charles Tillman, was a guy who really forced a lot of turnovers and just a sound technique guy. He's gone with a torn tricep. But we're going to go with the team who has the more talent. I think it's going to be a very close game. But let's go with Chicago winning this one at home. Let's go Chicago 23, the Jets 17. All right, it's Thursday night football. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Atlanta Falcons. We're inching up on game time. You see fans starting to enter the stadium. Things are ready to get going tonight. Is it going to be the Buccaneers with a tough road victory for their first win of the season, or are the Atlanta Falcons going to improve to 2-0 at home? Either way it goes, should be a good one. Meanwhile, you stay right here in the green room. You are with the NFL Exporter, and this is Yeahmon Radio. We'll be back after this commercial break. All right, welcome back. It's almost game time. It's the NFL Exporter, and you are in the green room. We are live on Yeahmon Radio, and we are getting ready for the big Thursday night football game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers in town playing the Atlanta Falcons. Now, before we preview this game, let's go ahead and make sure you know how to connect with us on our social networks. For myself, you can hit me up on Twitter or Facebook at NFL Exporter. Once again, that is spelled NFLExporter. Or you can go to YouTube.com to check out past episodes of The Green Room. Go and click on the search engine and just put in the NFL Exporter in the Green Room on Yeahmon Radio, and you'll be able to check that out. And then to be able to connect with Yeahmon Radio, you can hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, whatever your choice, and that's Yeahmon Radio. That's spelled YEAHMON Radio. Now, to be a part of the show, which I strongly encourage, I would love to hear from our fans, our listeners, our viewers out there. The call-in number is 716-249-0552. Again, that number is 716-249-0552. If you would like to use email to be a part of the show, you want to go to NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Just leave your name, your city and state, your favorite football team, and I will be glad to talk about your comment. If you would like some advice for your fantasy football team, or you just want to chop it up and discuss NFL or fantasy football, certainly would like to have that happen. I'd like to thank the guys who emailed to be a part of this week's show. Once again, that was Charles out in South Carolina, Aaron out in Maryland, Terrence in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as Myron in Atlanta, Georgia. All right, Thursday night football. Let's go ahead and take a look at how this one is going to shake out tonight. The visiting Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as I mentioned, are coming in with a lot of injuries. We'll have to see if starting running back Doug Martin can give it a go tonight. If not, they have a reliable backup in Bobby Rainey. And so we're certainly going to see how that's going to fare. Now, the biggest thing we're looking for on the offensive side of the football from Tampa Bay is, can they get the passing game going? You know, coming into the season, you're figuring you have a big-time wide receiver in Vincent Jackson. You have a good rookie coming in Mike Evans. Now, the tight end position is another position they've been hit with injuries. You have a veteran in Brandon Myers, but they traded Timothy Wright to New England for an offensive lineman who, ironically, has been injured. He's not 100%. Logan Mankins. We'll see if he's going to give it a go tonight. But their rookie tight end, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, also has a foot injury. And so you can see how injuries have really affected this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense early, with 3 of their players already being nicked up. But they've got to get that passing game going. You know, let's face it, as effective as they can run the football, they're going to have to pass at some point. Josh McCown has got to find a way to be more effective. He's been very inconsistent in his first 2 games, but I will say the defenses that he played were very aggressive. Week 1, he played Carolina. You know, they're bringing a top 5 defense to the table. Week 2, it was the Rams. You know that they have a big-time pass rush with Robert Quinn. They're another team who has a very good front 7, so I will give him the benefit of the doubt there. When you look on the defensive side of the football, the main concern for Tampa Bay, number 1, is getting a pass rush. They're going to have to get to Matt Ryan tonight. If they're going to give Ryan all day to pass the football, then, man, he's going to pick this defense apart. And then, you know, they're going to have to find a way as well to defend in that secondary. And so I think those go hand in hand. And it doesn't look too good for Tampa Bay. You're figuring their top defensive lineman is out and their top defensive back is out. So the pass rush is hurt and coverage is hurt. Nonetheless, I know the Buccaneers don't want to drop to 0-3. That is a huge hole to dig themselves out of, but they're in serious danger of doing that tonight. We take a look at the Atlanta Falcons. I think that this will be a good game for them to try to get the running game going at some point in the ball game. Now, in this one, we know that Atlanta's bread and butter is passing, and in this particular matchup, that seems to be an advantage that they have. And so you would think that they would want to attack Tampa Bay, again, a team who right now doesn't have really any pass rush and is banged up in the secondary. Now, the thing we want to watch for tonight is wide receiver Roddy White has a hamstring issue that he's dealing with. We want to see if he's 100%, if he's able to go. If this game gets out of hand early, then obviously his snaps will be reduced. You're certainly expecting for Julio Jones to come out tonight and put up some big numbers for you. Again, though, we want to see what this Atlanta offense can do on the ground, because they have to establish some type of running game at some point. When we're looking at the Falcons' defense, it's been opportunistic, you know. Now, this is a team as well that struggled to get a pass rush. They've been pretty good against the run. That secondary has to improve as well. And so we'll see tonight how they match up against Tampa Bay's wide receivers. But I think overall, when you're looking at this game, all things considered, you look at Matt Ryan's career and what he's been able to do at the Georgia Dome, you have to like Atlanta in this one. As far as the score goes, let's go with Atlanta 30. We can go with Tampa Bay 20. I think that Atlanta obviously has a decisive advantage pretty much in all areas and aspects of this game. Tampa Bay has their work cut out, and I just don't see them being able to get the job done tonight. But again, this is a division game, and if anything, you're thinking that Tampa Bay is going to come out the gates quick with a sense of urgency and fear of going down to 0-3. All right, it's that time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's everybody go ahead and roll up. Get ready to burn it down. Let everybody go ahead, get your food ready. Get your seat in front of the TV. I know that everybody's excited. Down in Atlanta, probably a lot of tailgating going on. Tampa Bay is a very short trip up to Georgia, so we got a lot of Buccaneers fans here in town. There's a lot of people from the Florida area that live in Atlanta, and so great atmosphere down at the Georgia Dome. The city's always buzzing when there's a Thursday night, a Sunday night, or a Monday night football game in Atlanta. When the game is over, everybody hits the streets, hits the clubs, things of that nature. So, man, we had another great show. Once again, I am your host, the NFL Exporter. Make sure to join us each and every Thursday at 7 o'clock for the Firehouse, where we talk about NFL and fantasy football and get you ready for the big Thursday night football game. So it's that time. Let's see how things shake out. In week 1, we had the Seattle Seahawks win at home 36-16 over the Green Bay Packers. Last week, we had the home team Baltimore Ravens put the smackdown on Pittsburgh 26-6. Let's see if that trend is going to continue this week with another decisive victory by the home team, or can a road team finally pull out a victory on Thursday night football? We're going to find out here in just a few minutes. Should be a great game tonight. The ATL is buzzing. We're a few minutes away from kickoff. It has been another great show. I want for everybody to enjoy the big game tonight, and make sure that you join us right here, same time next week. As you can see, we get you covered. We do our midweek report. We check the latest trending topics and news. We talk about injuries. We talk about fantasy football. We preview the games for the upcoming week. And of course, we get you ready for the big Thursday night football game. This one had a little extra special meaning tonight because the game is right here in the ATL. All right, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the game. Once again, make sure to be here next week with us in the green room. I am your host, the NFL Exporter, for Yeahmon Radio, signing off 1100.